Hey, my friends, welcome back to Rebuild Reality, where as always, we talk about who we really are, why we're here, and how all of this 3D stuff actually really works. I am your host, Guy Cheyenne, and today we're going to be talking about something a little different than normal. In fact, quite a bit different than normal. Now, in the last video, we talked about Neville Goddard and about how he was actually able to consciously pretty darn quickly move his consciousness from one physical version of himself to another. Something he said that he did repeatedly during his life, obviously, once he learned how. Now, that is, of course, what we're essentially doing when we are manifesting, when we are creating our new reality. We're like, oh, okay, I don't want that version of me that has that sucky life or that this isn't going well. I want this version of me where things are going the way I want them to. So essentially we're doing exactly the same thing. It's just kind of in our perception, a slower process where we're just starting to steer ourselves over in this direction instead of staying on that road. So in speaking about that, I kind of realized that I too, there was a point in my life where knowing that extraordinary things really do happen was really important, because up to that point I'd never met anybody that had been extraordinary. I'd never even hear some vague things, but that at that time there wasn't much of anything. Now there is. You go to the internet and I'm telling you, it's loaded. You know where to look. It's loaded with stuff. So, but I always felt, and almost it was upsetting to me, because I'm like, extraordinary things should be happening. In fact, I was confused that they weren't. I thought well, I should be meeting all these people and all these, crazy things should be happening. Because to me, it actually almost felt like that would be normal, that I would be able to talk to animals, that I would be able to fly, and I don't know, you know what I mean? Do all kinds of things. So there was a point in my life when those things actually began to happen for me. So, no, not flying, although in my consciousness I do, but meeting some very interesting individuals. And in this particular case, and this has happened to me a few times in this incarnation, where I've met people who are not from here. That didn't come to this world through normal means like most of us do. So I was in the summer in July of 2019, and I had recently been going out with somebody. I had a new boyfriend, and we decided to go to this big spiritual fair that happened every year near Glastonbury. So it's kind of a drive, so we thought, well, let's go ahead and get an Airbnb, right? But there wasn't a lot to choose from out there, so we ended up just getting a room in someone's nice house, because we're like, well, that'll be okay, because it's a nice house and stuff. So the people weren't there when we got there. I think around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and so we wanted to stay up. I didn't want to just go to bed and close the door and someone comes home and someone's in one of your bedrooms, that you don't even know who's in there really. So I'm like, well, that doesn't seem polite. So I'm going to stay up and, say hello and stuff like that. So they came home around 10 o'clock at night. And when they did, they had a glass of red wine. It was a man and his wife. And then once she had her glass of wine, she went upstairs to bed. But he stayed. And he started talking about different things than we had been talking about up to that point. And one of the first things he did when his wife went upstairs to bed was he turned and he looked at me and he said, "They told me last night that the sky was coming." I'm like, "Oh, did they?" Now, most people would probably start freaking out a little bit. What do you mean they? Who is they? And who told you that what are you talking about? But me, I'm like, okay. I'm like, yeah, fine. So he started talking and telling us about him. Now, I only learned a certain amount that evening because my boyfriend at the time was extremely talkative. So I did learn a number of things about him that evening. But the next morning, I'm like, just, at breakfast, I'm like, just zip it, basically. And I need him to talk. I need to find out who he is, and he wants to talk. So I want him to talk as much as possible so I can figure this out. So between that evening and the next morning, he, like I said a number of very interesting things. One of the first things was that he had been in the Sahara Desert, the middle of the Sahara Desert, all by himself. Well, I think most people know that nobody is in the middle of the Sahara Desert by themselves unless they're dead, because nobody goes into the middle of the Sahara Desert alone. You just wouldn't do that, They said he was out there for a number of days and that he was losing track of time. He said he was kind of going in and out of consciousness. And this is when I believe that this happened to him, where he met this, for lack of a better word, extraterrestrial, non-human, that kind of, let's say, hitched a ride. So I have seen this before, where extraterrestrials will hook themselves into and kind of live through the person and be, well, basically kind of controlling them. So, which is why normally I don't want to bring things up like this, because I don't want to freak anybody out, But if you know what those things are like, obviously you could avoid such a thing. But not that, I have no idea. I cannot tell you. I have no idea how common or uncommon this is. All I know is somehow I end up meeting these individuals. They seem to make a beeline for me or something. So, okay. So anyway, that's where I later figured out he had picked up this attachment. And so this extraterrestrial started working through him. And he said while he was out there in the desert, obviously it was keeping him alive. And he met the U.S. military who came across him and were like the same thing. They're like, dude, what are you doing out here all alone? What's going on? And so he ended up catching a lift back with them, a ride back to their base camp. And there was, I guess, some journalists and stuff there. And he ended up somehow fascinating, of course, one of the people there, one of the journalists. And the next day they went off to see the Dalai Lama together. So it was those kind of things happening, because he would start to talk to people and they'd be like, this is an interesting guy, So over the course of that evening and the next morning, he told me, like I said, a number of things, including that. Also about a device that he showed me that he had built that was about somewhere between 2 and 3 feet tall. It was pyramid shaped, and it worked, as I recall, on like gravitational fields and magnetics, which of course most things when you get into space technology and stuff like that, they do. And he said you would put it between your legs and it would heal you. So I'm like, well, that's cool. He actually wrote a book that I actually have it upstairs in my attic in a box up there. Unfortunately, I actually wasn't terribly impressed by it, but I was impressed by other things. One of the things he had actually done was he built a website that he showed me that I thought was a fantastic website. It was like a community website that every community, every town, every city could have, where the people who live there could all join in, and whenever something needed to be changed or fixed, everyone had a vote. So if someone was like, look, we really need a stop sign at the corner of, Elm and, I don't know, Johnson Street or something. I'm just making these things up. Then other people could come on and either disagree or agree. And if enough people agreed, then like the town council, the government there would implement it, would go ahead and do it. Oh, people want this. Let's do it. Or, oh, people don't want us to build, a trash dump over there, so we won't do it. Things that obviously make complete sense, and I'm like, well, this is obviously a brilliant idea. So I really did actually like that one. So anyway, obviously we only had so much time there. And but we decided to keep in touch. He's like, oh, you guys are, I really enjoyed meeting you, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, you too. You're obviously a very interesting individual. And so we started keeping in contact, just like on Messenger online. And so he was messaging my boyfriend, but it was more kind of niceties. Hey, how's it going? It was great to meet you. Hope you're doing well, blah blah blah. But with me, he started to talk to me more, and it wasn't in a coming on to me kind of way or anything like that. And so actually, before I did this video, I went to look because I couldn't exactly remember his name. So I'm like, I want to know his name. So I went back to go look at the messages, and which are still there. And then I started reading it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write some of this stuff down, some of the things that he and I spoke about. So what he said when we first started communicating, he said, it's so good to hear your voice. I remember you from somewhere. I trust you. So yes, I truly feel honored. He said, like you, I can feel people's emotions physically. I can hear them speaking to themselves, usually extremely badly, and it upsets me. But I'm still learning how to be here. But luckily, I have a lot of help. And then one of the other things he said is, there is another world just out of view if you want it. He didn't expand on that, by the way. And then he sent me a document that I thought that he had sent because it was written on there. It said a Lockheed Martin, and Lockheed Martin, of course, has to do with, they're like an aeronautical engineering company that used to be all about just about planes and engines, stuff like that. And but obviously they got into high technology, extraterrestrial technology, and all kinds of stuff, because they're one of those places that has a lot of secrets. Like JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, and Lockheed Martin and all that are very big on figuring out the things that come in from other unearthly sources, and reverse engineering them and figuring them out and stuff like that, which obviously tons of that stuff has happened. So he sent me this thing, and I'm like, oh, so you sent, because he had made he had this idea, and he had this whole plan that he had written out about how to basically make a spacecraft engine. And I thought he had sent it directly to Lockheed Martin, but he said no, he said, I didn't write the document. He said, Lockheed Martin did. He said they did it from a request by a government agency to analyze what I have been offering the government agency. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So he had approached the government with his plans. One of the other interesting things about him, well, I'll mention that in a second. So he sent me this. He's like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, well, this is quite interesting. I said, well, you might want to explain the very first part of that to me, of what is written in this document. Because I'm like, I'm open-minded, but clearly I need to know a little bit more here, because at the very beginning of the document that Lockheed Martin had written, it said, this document pertains to the non-human, and then it said his name, and his invention. This document pertains to the non-human XYZ and his invention. Yes. So, which obviously now you can understand why I'm like, you need to kind of tell me more about this, I'm like, but I'm not freaking out or anything. I'm not saying oh yeah, that's I'm not losing it or something. I'm like, yeah, okay. I've known these things were there, okay. You're obviously interested in me for some reason. I don't know why. Because he'd be like, I feel like we're really connected, and I feel safe with you and stuff like this, So I think it was kind of, probably kissing my ass perhaps a bit. but because of looking back with the things he was saying. So when I asked him, I said, well, so you need to kind of go ahead, and if they're saying that you're a non-human, then, who are you? Where are you from? Etc. And so he said, instead of telling me, he said, 2 questions, if I may. He said, what is it that you want? And why do you think we met? And I said, oh, well, I don't know why we met, Up to that point, I thought that it was just one of those things. And I was just like, well, leave it to me to choose that place, over other ones. So, but I did say, I said that I was here to help people and that I didn't want anything from anybody. I said, well, I'm not here to, I don't know why I said it, but I'm not here to control or to dominate or to take anybody's power, So then he messaged me back again, because I'm like, well, there's my answer. And he's like, can I be cheeky? He said, you haven't answered my question yet. What is it you, capital Y-O-U, want out of life? What I mean is, what do you want out of life, you yourself? He said, that will tell you how we will know each other. Like you, I'm open to every possible outcome. And then he said, by the way, you're finding out about me, but I have learned that treading gently is preferable. To know too much too soon about me can be frightening for some people. So you're getting the picture here, right? So to that I responded, okay, so what do I want out of life? I'm like, you want to know what I really want? What I really truly want? I said, to fully integrate with my entire being so I can fully and completely and consciously know the creator that I am as I am. And then to help others to do the same. And then I added, and also to have as much fun as possible. And that was August 7th, 2019, when I wrote that. And I never heard from him again. Why? As I later realized, because there was no transaction. Now, most people in the world would be like, what do I want? Oh, I want riches, I want fame, I want success, I want whatever, men, I want women, I want travel, I want to have a price. And with me, there was nothing he could give me because he didn't have access to what I wanted. So it would have been an unwitting, unknowing agreement if I had said, oh, I want money, I want this, I want that, I want all these things that I would have unconsciously have made with him. And I've escaped this thing a few times in my life that I didn't realize that's actually what was going on. So obviously when he had been out in the desert, this individual, who I assume was probably under some other name, his true name, had made that agreement. Another interesting fact that I found out about him was that he actually had worked for the BBC and was actually doing interviews. And actually, when in our conversations, he was talking about going somewhere and interviewing somebody there and having the long drive and things like that. So yes, there are ETs who live through people through agreements. They're like, well, okay, so on one hand, I'm not a fan, because obviously I would never condone someone unknowingly making an agreement to such a thing and having this kind of attachment. I don't know. I think some people, well, from other people I've met who have also had ET attachments, who loved it, who absolutely adored it, made their life better in their opinion. I don't know how much this individual was really aware of that things, but because he kind of had dare I say it, a big ego on one hand, I could see how he got into it, but at the same time, he was wanting to do good things. You know, he invented that community website. He was trying to do things on the internet that were for people. He invented that healing device, etc. and stuff. So he had come here to be a part of this show going on and to participate, but he kind of would remain out of visual range in the fourth dimension, basically. But then still there. So, which is why he's like, you know, to know me, what did he say? Would be to know too much too soon can be frightening for some people. So, yes, I've met some interesting individuals in my life. There are extraordinary things that happen. Also, I do know individuals who've been kept alive who normally would have died if they didn't have their otherworldly help going in and fixing things and keeping them going and stuff. So there are all kinds of levels that these things can work on. Sometimes not beneficial, sometimes very, very beneficial. So it's all out there, you know, it's all out there in the world of every single one of us, you know, all these extraordinary things do indeed exist. So I just wanted to share that one with you guys today, just so you know that, yeah, cool things, interesting things can happen. Just be aware. But that's why I focus on the other part of this, that nothing can harm you. What you say goes. If you're like, I remove all attachments right now, that's it. Everyone has to leave. Occasionally, I used to do that when I'm like, oh, it just feels icky in here or something. And I'll be like, all right, everybody out. I don't know who's here, but everybody out right now. Get out. Because you are the law. You are the one. You are the one who has the power. So I don't ever want anyone to feel like they are in a vulnerable place or with any of these things, because this is all about understanding the extraordinary being that you are. And because of that, trust me, there is nothing to be afraid of anywhere in this world, because this world belongs to you, and what you say goes. So I hope you have enjoyed that today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you've had any extraordinary experiences or interesting things that you would like to share with the rest of us. And I look forward to hearing what you guys think and what you have to say. Otherwise, I'm going to see you guys here next time on Rebuild Reality.